Good morning. I'd like to formally wish all good morning to Harris Hall and welcome those joining us online. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Lane County Board of County Commissioners to order. It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. I'm reminded that Saturday is Flag Day, June 14th. So I reflected on this day, a nation formed under God and a national emblem of our flag reminds us of the highest callings to strive in every endeavor for a unified land, a unified people, and ensuring the enduring principles of liberty and justice for everyone. So I'm honored to serve alongside the leaders on this board whom I believe embody these ideals as well. The top of the morning to you, Mr. Mokryski. How are you today?
Good morning. Great. Thank you.
Good deal. Any adjustments to our agenda this morning?
No.
Any emergency business?
No.
All right. We do have a 9 o'clock time certain public hearing and a work session on the fiscal year 25-26 approved budget and the fiscal year 25-26 budget adoption. And we'll start this item with our esteemed Christine Moody, our budget and financial planning manager, and we'll have a summary from her. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. So as mentioned, public hearing on the approved budget. The budget was approved for 25-26 on May 20th. There were some changes made by the Budget Committee to the proposed budget. That is detailed in your packet. There's a one-page summary in there. It resulted in a decrease of just over $9 million in resources and requirements and a decrease of 7 FTE. That was primarily due to the loss of a couple of grants, one of them being a federal EPA grant and another one being a more local workforce grant. There was a small add in public health. So that is what got us to the final budget numbers that are detailed in your packet, just over $1.2 billion and just over 2,000 FTE. So with that, that's the summary on the approved budget.
Great. Well, thank you very much. The purpose of this hearing is to discuss the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025, as approved by the Lane County Budget Committee on May 20th, 2025. This public hearing is required to be held prior to the final budget adoption under ORS 294.453. Also, notice of this hearing and the summary of the changes was published as required by ORS 294.438 and detailed in the public hearing board agenda item. Participants may testify for or against any item contained in the approved budget. So I'd like to open the portion of the meeting to public testimony. And do we have anyone online or in the queue for public testimony? I'm seeing in the back room a head shake nod, so there's no public testimony. So I'd like to close the public hearing, please. And if there's any additional, yes?
Can we please check those online?
2 online do we have, or do we not?
We need to ask.
Oh, go
for
ahead,
those
please.
joining us virtually, if you would like to give public comment for this public hearing on the fiscal year 25-26 approved budget, please raise your virtual hand now. I see no hands raised, Chair. I'll return it to you.
Okay, great. Thanks for checking that. So we're still good to go in the order. So this item has no then further action by a public hearing or by the board, and we'll move to our work session, which is scheduled for a budget adoption on the 24th of June, 2025. Is there any other comments that we have from the board before we go? Ms. Moody.
And maybe as a comment for me, so the work session part of this is really meant to just ask the board if there is anything else that you would like changed before the budget is adopted. There are limitations. We cannot change expenditures by more than 10% within any fund, either up or down. And we absolutely cannot change the property taxes that were levied by the Budget Committee. So occasionally the board might have something that they want me to include. Departments are also working on any adjustments that they have, anything that's changed since they turned their budgets in back in February. So you will have that information that will come to you on June 24th, but just wanting to make sure there's nothing else.
Commissioner Trieger, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Christine. Thank you for the presentation. First, I just want to also really appreciate and thank the budget staff. You sort of hold all of the input from every department. It's no small feat, and your department, as many others, have been reduced, and so that makes a bigger workload, so thank you for that. I did want to raise one thing. This was a matter that was raised at the Budget Committee meetings, and I can understand why our community appointees may have been reluctant to weigh in on an item that I proposed that was very specific to commissioners. But I've been giving a lot of thought since then, and given the increasingly concerning news at the state level with the state budget as the legislative session winds down in light of the county's own continuing revenue shortfalls, and with potential and actual actions at the federal level relating to county funding, and in recognition that every department across this organization that uses general funds was asked to make reductions and cuts. I think we as commissioners have an opportunity to sort of share in that pain and demonstrate our commitment to this organization. And so I would like to have, as the chair often says, skin in the game. And each commissioner has a discretionary office budget of $15,000 each year to spend as they wish. We all use it to support various community initiatives and for travel and supplies and so on related to our individual offices. But none of us fully spends that. And in light of the austere environment in which we're operating, I would like to propose that we amend the budget to eliminate those individual office accounts. We do still have a shared account for conferences and so on that are things that we are attending on behalf of the entire board. So I would like to amend the budget as to eliminate individual commissioner's office discretionary spending accounts of $15,000 per office, which would be a total spending reduction of $75,000.
Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree. We all are feeling the pain of different departments having to cut positions. And although it's very nice to be able to contribute this discretionary account to various personal agencies or things that we want to support or continuing education, I too am willing to sacrifice that to make sure that we can continue shoring up some other positions in the county. So I'm not sure if that's a motion. Yes?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
So it's been moved by Commissioner Trieger. Let me follow this to eliminate the discretionary spending accounts from each of the 5 commissioners for a total savings of $75,000 to the budget. It's been seconded by Commissioner Buck. Do I have any discussion to the motion? Yes, Commissioner, or Vice Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As I said when this came up in the budget meeting, as a rural commissioner, I need to be nimble when my communities need something. This year, I think I have $13,000 of the budget left in there out of the 15. But I have used that money to help buy small tools that are vital for water districts and so on and so forth in the past. And, you know, one thing that made a huge difference, like in the Mapleton water system, I helped the school district put in a well so they could be self-sufficient when the water system goes down in Mapleton. And now they're the resiliency hub for there. If the water system goes down, the school well still works and the community comes there. And that is very valuable. And I think it was, I don't know exactly how much the number was. It was around $5,500 to finish that project. And that was huge. That made a big difference in that neighborhood. So I'm not going to support this, but I am going to support using these funds in a fiscally responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr.
You know, in order to talk about this, we need to talk a little bit about where did it come from. You know, when I first became a county commissioner, I think the budget was, Christina, help me, was it $3,000 in the?
Could have been, it's been a few amounts over the years, yeah.
And a couple of years into that, not long after Commissioner Buck was elected, as a matter of fact, we were lobbied pretty hard to bump it to $15,000. And I remember the discussions in the Budget Committee, and I remember exactly who it was who was lobbying to bump it to $15,000. It was in no small part to help with labor in our offices. We don't have an office account. We don't have assistants. We have 0 assistants that are budgeted by the county. So this came to help us with assistants. I mostly, for my assistants, have been, not assistants, but I've had interns, unpaid interns. That being said, the $15,000, I found great opportunities to use some of that money in different areas. And I'll name a couple of things that I've been able to support. Historically, I've given fairly good sums to, for instance, the HIV Alliance and for instance, Food for Lane County, occasionally to a graduation event. occasionally to a neighborhood group. The River Road Neighbors Association, for instance, had difficulty with the newsletter. I was able to help them a little bit and garner a little bit of extra budget money for that. So the relatively small amount of money, and money's relative. I mean, you got $15,000 in your pocket, that's a lot of money. But if you have $15,000 to judiciously appropriate in places where it can leverage more, and we can do that, and we do it. We do leverage more with the small amounts we're able to grant. I give money to the BEF, the Blackton Education Foundation, which helps Senator Manning, among others, to give graduating kids at Calapooya High School and other places maybe just a pair of shoes. But it really does leverage money that comes from elsewhere. So I'm in favor of keeping it. And if I have money to give back at the end of the year, then I'm in favor of letting Mr. Mokrahsky and you determine what is the best use for that at the end of the year. But in the meantime, being able to leverage a great deal of outside money in tiny, very specialized places, I find that very valuable. And for that reason, I'm going to vote against this motion.
I agree with my two colleagues that say the value of this money is what it is. I think if you want to know the character of your county commissioner, look to see how they spend that money and where they spend it to the most good. I think the way I spend it and see how it can do its good in the community, it multiplies time and time over again. And just recently, I remember sharing in the budget committee the drone program that I sponsored for the Springfield Police Department, which just last month saved a few officers' lives as they deployed drones into a house with an armed suspect in it. So I believe those funds do what they're intended to do, and they do more than what the value of those funds are. So just in short, because we're short on time, I'll also not be supporting this motion. So if there's any other comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion failed. Nay. Motion fails 3-2. Thank you very much. I guess we're out. Thank you very much, Christine. Appreciate you very much. Like I said before, friends, here in Harris Hall, we are very short on time today. We have a very packed agenda. We do have our public comments coming up as our number 4 item. Thank you. And we have 2 more. So we have 2 online, 15. So we're going to have to limit our public comments down to 1.5 minutes today. And this is what I'd also want to suggest. If you are here testifying on the sheriff's item or a similar item and you make similar comments to people before you, I would encourage you maybe to consolidate your items into a person that would represent a few of you. Because like I said before, we have 20 minutes to allow for public comments, and then we're going to have to cut it off. So I'd appreciate your comments. So if you would, we'll gather on here in front of the microphone. Yeah.
If I may, just to pose a question. I know we have a 10 a.m. time certain, but why is it that we need to limit them to only 1.5 minutes today? We
have other items before our time certain on that. We have a Health and Human Services item, and we have a Public Works item.
I just want to say I object to the limitation because I think there is plenty of time in the day, but you are the chair and you get to make that decision.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to weigh in on that decision? Okay, then we'll continue on with 1.5 minutes then on this. The first person up for public comment is Jacob Griffin, followed by Emily Halbrand, please.
I truly and honestly believe that public comment is more important than anything you have on your agenda, and I feel that the need to hear citizen comment is more important than anything else, particularly when you are choosing the most important, most independent law enforcement position in this county, limited by absurd limitations on who can be sheriff, then making it available only to people who, if they do not get the job, would report to the sheriff or need the support of the sheriff they were interviewing against. And then I see tomorrow afternoon you actually have swearing in of the sheriff on the agenda. You have one person. Lane County is a really excellent county full of excellent people who deserve the very best. And Chair Lovell, I have heard you week after week talk about that, about how important that is. We're here in the most dangerous time in our country, and the marginalized people in this community are in incredible danger. And the speed at which you are pushing to adopt one sheriff, if you think about, I was saying the other night, in a bad crime novel, a commission would do what you're doing. And I don't believe that any of you are corrupt, but the way you are doing this appears corrupt. One person, one vote, one commission. Your questions, do you have another legal person, a law enforcement person here to interview with you? Is there anything that you're doing here that makes me feel you're doing an excellent job?
Emily Heilbrunn, followed by Tom Peck, please.
Good morning. My name is Emily Heilbrunn. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Eugene. Thank you for conducting a public interview of Chief Deputy Carl Wilkerson, the only applicant for the sheriff position. Although he is the only applicant, it is still very important that there's a public interview and that the questions we have submitted be asked, and I'm not going to repeat those questions in the interest of time. Especially in recent days, ICE has become more aggressive in its efforts to arrest undocumented immigrants. Although most of the news is coming out of Los Angeles, ICE is also becoming more aggressive in Oregon as well as in other states. The members of our community need to hear from Chief Deputy Wilkerson that he is committed to following the provisions of the statement that your board adopted in April. That includes upholding the Oregon Sanctuary Promise Act. Another commitment in that statement was that Lane County would update and create policies across Lane County to protect the rights of transgender people and immigrants. That would include updating policies in the Lane County Jail to ensure that transgender people are housed appropriately and treated fairly. We need to hear that the person applying to be the next sheriff is committed to doing that. Thank you for listening to our concerns.
Thank you. Tom Peck, followed by John Crowder, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Peck. I'm the Vice Chair of the Friendly Area Neighborhood, and I'm also a delegate to the Neighborhood Leaders Council. I am very concerned about the process of hiring a new sheriff, especially with only one candidate in mind. I believe that it is critical that the new candidate is fully prepared to support the Oregon sanctuary laws and protect the civil rights of immigrants and trans people in our community. We are in a very new period with federal agencies overstepping citizens' constitutional rights. It is particularly important that our local police officials are fully aware that they are here to protect all of our members of our community. I would request that the hiring process does not close until there are sufficient number of candidates, I would say around 10, to interview to make sure that we find a candidate that's most appropriate for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. John Crowder, followed by Sean Trotter, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to public comment. I've been a resident in the River Road, Santa Clara neighborhood for over 20 years. It's my understanding that the contract for the Navigation Center is due to expire on June 30th, and the board will make a decision as to whether to renew that contract. I want to focus on 3 points. The first point is the Navigation Center is providing a positive place for residents to transition into the community. So I realize that. Also, it is next to a $40 million high school that was built. There's a bus transit system that transports those students there. Those students are on open campus, and they're able to be around the Navigation Center during their lunch hour or getting on the bus. And I do not feel that that is compatible with a safe community. Number 3, it's next to a retail community that has basically gone downhill ever since I moved there. It used to be a thriving community, and it's really questionable now. There are businesses that have left, And I'm sure that the owners of the Riviera Shopping Center have problems filling it. So my recommendation is when you vote on this, consider your high school in your area. Would you want this by your high school community? And I suggest that you vote no.
Thank you so much. Sean Trotter, followed by Bill Compton.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sean Trotter. I'm a business owner and a resident of rural Lane County. I'm here to speak briefly about Under Sheriff Carl Wilkerson. When I think of the characteristics of an ideal sheriff, I think of a person who is invariably honest, possesses unwavering character, and is courageously driven by principle. This ideal sheriff is kind to a fault to the citizens he serves as well as those who serve under him, all while passionately standing up for the little guy within our community, the community that he's proud to call home. This ideal sheriff is intrinsically fair and considers relationships his life currency, this ideal sheriff. I have known Under Sheriff Wilkerson for 22 years. I have the privilege of knowing him both professionally and personally. Professionally, I've served our community alongside him, all while witnessing his true compassion to victims when he thought no one was watching. Personally, I have the privilege of knowing Under Sheriff Wilkerson as a friend who always answers the phone every time I call, no matter how busy he is. A friend who offers a kind smile and a welcoming embrace every time he sees me, just as a true family member might. I'm not unique in this way because Under Sheriff Wilkerson treats everyone this way. I've had conversations with Under Sheriff Wilkerson where, with tears in his eyes, he speaks of his passion of creating.
I'm sorry.
What?
Your time is up. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Compton, followed by DJ Kelly Quattrochi.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill Compton with the Cornerstone Leadership Consulting. In my time in school during my master's degree working on my dissertation, I read a book by John Nesbitt. It was called Megatrends. And one of the major things that I got out of that in regards to my studies of leadership and organizational behavior is that in times of transition and change, there's oftentimes crisis involved in that. Welcome to our world today. That book was written 20 years ago, and it's a timeless truth. But he also said during those times of crisis and change, there's a need for stability so we don't lose the good things in our lives and in our communities, in our state, and in our country. And so it's important for us to realize the stability that has been found over 20 years in the man of Carl Wilkerson. He has been a tremendous deputy as well as an undersheriff or chief deputy. And over the last 5 or 6 years, he has been drawing near to Cliff Harold to understand all the nuances of leadership. And so to be wise, to be prudent, to be concerned about stability in time of crisis, it's important for us to continue with that man of integrity, Carl Wilkerson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DJ Kelly Quattrochi, followed by Ryder Hales, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is DJ Kelly Quattrochi. I'm from Ward 4. I also just want to echo that I believe that the current process around the hiring of a potential new sheriff, while it might be what has been done or been agreed upon, to the public looks suspect. And perception is reality. And whether or not we've only had one applicant, we need to know that this applicant is the right one, and we're not appointing someone because there is only one. If he does not answer the questions around Oregon Sanctuary Promise, the statement you all have made and supported, talking about, or if he does not talk about supporting transgender individuals or undocumented individuals in Lane County, then we need to not just say yes because there is one, and do what is right and continue to search. This is not just a condemnation of one person, one process, but looking at the agenda of having interviews and then a swearing-in ceremony does not fill me with belief that this is actually an open process, because it does not seem like it. And so, again, I have been here multiple times. I have worked with many of you, and do believe that you are trying to do what is best for Lane County. I just urge you to continue to listen, to change, and to adapt as we're trying to do what is best for all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryder Hayes, followed by Judy Bowles, please.
Hello, I'm Ryder Hales. I echo the concerns of others to ensure that this process of appointing a new sheriff is not rushed simply because there's only one applicant. I want to make sure that Under Sheriff Wilkerson will uphold the Sanctuary Promise Act, and that if public officials follow through with state and county policy to stop federal overreach, will Under Sheriff Wilkerson defend them, or will he show that this is just another entity that rolls over in response to our administration? Will Sheriff Wilkerson improve and create policies that protects our immigrant and transgender neighbors? In these times of law enforcement escalation and gross violation of due process across the country, it is paramount that the sheriff and the Lane County government is committed to protecting our most vulnerable and marginalized community members. And if these promises aren't upheld, then let's amend the county charter residency requirements. Let's widen the search and make sure that we appoint a sheriff who actually shows concern about everyday people, that we have a law enforcement that wants to serve the people of Lane County, something that law enforcement currently miserably fails at. Thank you for your time. The people are here, and we'll remember your choice.
Thank you. Judy Bowles, followed by Ruth Kaminsky.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Judy Bowles, and I live in Santa Clara. I am a member of the Board of Trustees of Temple Beth Israel. When I have spoken with you in the past, I've been careful to say that I was speaking as an individual, not as a representative of Temple Beth Israel. I'm now happy to say that I am expressing the views of our board. We have adopted a statement that explicitly voices our support for immigrants and for the rights of transgender people. With that in mind, I urge you all to make clear in your interview with the candidate for sheriff how critical it is that Lane County law enforcement adhere to the sanctuary laws of the state of Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Kaminsky, followed by Chloe Longworth.
My name is Ruth Kaminsky. I've lived in Eugene for 43 years. I've worked as an educator. I've worked in probably every school district in the county and with Head Start sites from Oak Ridge to Florence. I've never spoken at a county commissioners meeting, but we're living in unprecedented times, and I have watched with shock and horror what's happening in our country. There was never a time in my lifetime that the role, responsibilities, and leadership of law enforcement was more important. It is critical that the candidates for the elected role of sheriff of Lane County address the things people have talked about, whether they will uphold and support the Oregon Sanctuary Promise Act, whether they will develop policies to protect our transgender and immigrant members of our community and support our public officials. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chloe Longworth, followed by Guy Higashi.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chloe Longworth, and I'm a resident of the River Road area, and I'm here to talk about the sheriff interview. I request that we ask the sheriff applicants that if they will uphold the Oregon Sanctuary Promise Act. We'll also request that we ask if they will create and update policies protecting immigrant and transgender people in Lane County. And I request that we ask the sheriff applicant if they will defend public officials following the state law and county policy from federal overreach. And if the board is not satisfied with those answers for those questions, I will request that we amend the county charter residency requirements to allow a wider search for the best possible sheriff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Guy Higashi, followed by Keith Meser.
Thank you, Board of Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you again. As a resident of Lane County since 2019, I have basically 4 phrases that I'd like to put before you. One is continuity, the second is commitment, the third is track record. I guess that could be counted as one word maybe. And then another one is efficiency. Chief Deputy Wilkerson has been second in command since 2019 and has been working directly with the sheriff and has led the agency. Appointing Wilkerson will ensure the seamless leadership in Lane County and the standards of practice during the sheriff's retirement. It has been doing so. And decades of service throughout the institution, he exhibits both the knowledge and operational familiarity, which is so important for continuity and for maintaining public safety. With deep commitment for Wilkerson for 28 years in dedicated service as from the chief deputy, and long commitment to conserve the peace and uphold the values of justice and integrity in service. His career reflects that in priorities of safety, courtesy, professionalism, and proven by his leadership across diverse assignments such as patrol, SWAT, traffic, and investigation. A proven track record, he has exhibited that, and by appointing him would also be cost effective. And as a Christ follower and as a believer, as a pastor, and as a volunteer chaplain, thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much. Keith Messer, followed by Anna Lardner, please.
Good morning, distinguished panel and fellow residents. My name is Keith Messer. I'm a resident of Lane County. I would like to speak on behalf of Chief Deputy Carl Wilkerson. Deputy Wilkerson started with the Sheriff's Department in '94, became a deputy, and went to corrections and later transferring to the Police Service Department. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. To be selected to the Academy is a highly competitive process, needs nomination by supervisor and co-workers. In addition to be nominated, one must have an outstanding leadership skills and abilities to support and the abilities and the support of former graduates of the National Academy. He has served as a drug recognition expert, a SWAT operator, and so many other responsibilities. And in each segment of his law enforcement history, he has proven to be an outstanding character. Great accolades for a great officer, but he is also more than that. Because of his faith in God and excellent background in serving the people of Lane County, I believe him to be the perfect candidate. As a resident of Lane County, I know I want only the best for such a position, and with Chief Deputy Wilkerson, I sincerely believe he is the man for the job. It is an honor to have such a high caliber of a man seeking this position. Please support the man who supports us, Chief Deputy Wilkerson. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anna Lardner, followed by Nancy Buffum, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Anna Lardner. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an organizer with Trans Alliance of Lane County. My colleagues have already spoken, both via email and in person, about the specific asks that we want about protecting transgender immigrant communities, about upholding the Sanctuary Promise Act and things like that. I want to turn our attention, though, to what's happening in LA, where there is a federal overreach that has become a federal invasion of an American city in violation of what the governor of that state wants. That is what people are thinking about here in Oregon today. So although I hear Commissioner Lovall's sticking to the agenda, which I'm sure that Mr. Mokrzycki and the other county employees are happy about, the people of Lane County, when they woke up this morning, when they looked at the news all weekend, they were scared. They were horrified at what was happening in LA. They are scared that this will happen here. The future sheriff has a key role in preventing that from happening here. So although Chief Deputy Carl Wilkerson's track record may be exemplary up until the past, what matters now is what he will do in the future. It is important that he gives satisfactory answers to these questions and commits to protecting the people of Lane County and the values of our county that this board has itself upheld. So please make sure you ask those questions. Please make sure you consider carefully those answers, and please make sure you make the right choice for the people you serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nancy Buffum, followed by Rose Wildy.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Nancy Buffum, and I'm here as an observer with the League of Women Voters of Lane County. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public issues, and influences policy through education and advocacy. League observers are here to help ensure that citizens are aware of how the decisions that impact our community are being made and to promote the government, open, transparent government. We thank you for your willingness to serve. We are all here to promote and ensure a healthy democracy.
Thank you. Rose Wildy, and then we'll go to our online queue.
Hi, I'm Rose and I live in rural Lane County. So, I mean, it's kind of silly to call an election when we don't really elect a sheriff or a DA. I mean, it's never actually an open field. It's always an incumbent. It's always somebody who's got a vested interest. I mean, come on, that's just reality. So now I'll go to my prepared remarks, although Anna sort of stole my thunder. Good job, Anna, and good job, everyone. So we do have a federal regime seeking to overthrow duly elected government. You should be concerned. So in California, sending the military to arrest civilians against the will of the governor and mayor, they seek to overthrow our civil rights and already have taken away some on the basis of gender. They've taken away health care. They've fired members of the military because of their gender. They use racism to blame protesters for the disorder that Trump created. They will come here. We're a perfect target with the sanctuary county and city. So when Trump, ICE, and those members of the military who obey their commander-in-chief instead of the Constitution come for us in our county, will we have a sheriff who will stand up for us? Will that sheriff have the support of the people who chose them from a group of well-qualified candidates? They deserve to earn that support. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica, is there anyone online that we should allow for public comment at this time?
Yes, for those joining us virtually, if you would like to give public comment, please raise your virtual hand. Kathleen Torrance, I have unmuted you. Would you like to be on camera?
Yes.
Just one moment while I promote you to panelist. This takes a few moments. Go ahead and turn on your camera.
Yeah, got it.
Perfect. We see you and we can hear you, and you can begin your public comment.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's Kathleen Torrance. I live in Eugene, and I'd like to remind you briefly of the poem by Emma Lazarus at the base of the Statue of Liberty, which is essentially stating that the U.S. is welcoming and supportive of people who are in need of freedom, who are striving to live a better life. That means they can live the life they choose. We need to uphold that tenet. In fact, in his opening, Commissioner Lovell stated that the flag of the United States signifies, quote, unified people, end quote, justice for everyone. Please demand that the candidate for sheriff is queried on how they will uphold Oregon's Promise Act, and so that people who are striving to live the life they choose, immigrants, trans, people of color, etc., will be treated under the sheriff's watch with respect, dignity, and lawfully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, that concludes our online testimony.
All right, thank you very much, all those, for helping us get through that process and for keeping your words brief but powerful. Thank you very much for coming here. Our next item on our agenda is our consent calendar. All items here are listed routine by the Board of County Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item would have been removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately. Details to each item can be found in the blue links attached to the item descriptions. I'm looking for a motion for the consent calendar.
Chair, I move to approve the consent calendar for June 10th, 2025.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the consent calendar. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Our next item is our Health and Human Services item, and I'm going to give Commissioner Buck a chance to have the floor for a moment.
Thank you, Chair. Because this particular item involves St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County, and I am related to the Executive Director Emeritus of that organization who's still employed, I will declare a conflict of interest and step out while you take care of this business.
All right, thank you very much. This is Order 2506-1008 in the matter of approving contracts with St. Vincent de Paul Society and delegating the authority to the county administrator, their designee, or their sub-delegate to sign the approved actions. And we have Eve Gray, our wonderful Health and Human Services Director, at the table. Hello, Eve. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I hope you are as well.
Yes.
I am just here because of the need for recusal. Normally, this item would go on consent. So if you have any questions about this contract, of course, St. Vincent de Paul does a lot of very good work for us, particularly in the Human Services Division.
Any questions for Eve? Eve? Commissioner Farr, please.
Thank you. You know, I can dig through the details. What is the amount of the contract?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I would be happy to look it up.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I'm looking for a motion then.
Chair, I move to approve Order 2506-1008 in the matter of approving contract actions with St. Vincent de Paul Society and delegating authority to the county administrator, their designee, or their sub-delegate to sign approved actions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. And to the motion.
Second by Commissioner Farr. And to the motion. Discussion, please.
Thanks. This is, I'm looking it up. It's for the Family Shelter Service Annex. It's a pretty amazing program they operate there. An opportunity to say that out loud. And the amount that we contribute, that we share, leverages other money from the outside. It's so important that we're able to do that. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Yes, and $900,000 is this amendment for a total of $1.6 million for the contract.
I did spot that. Thank you, Eve.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, it's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Farr on Order 2506-1008. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with Commissioner Buck recused. Thank you, Eve, very much. Our next item up for discussion is a discussion action with our Public Works Department. I believe Amber Bell is here. Nope, it's going to be County Council. Mr. Rob Bovet, how are you, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We have some kind of late-breaking developments, and we're really not ready for these orders yet. This involves hearings officers for land use actions on behalf of the county. One of the hearings officers that was going to be potentially appointed here is not going to serve after July 1. She's made that selection. So we're pretty much not prepared to move forward at this. We have confirmed with LCOG that they do have the availability of at least one, possibly two other hearings officers temporarily for a few months while we sort out a more permanent solution. And as the chair is aware, I've already spoken to you about the selection process itself and whether or not LCOG should do a new RFP, whether the county wants to do its own RFP. So we're kind of at a point now where we need to kind of push this off for a little while we sort out not only process, but who's available to do the work.
Great, thank you. Would this be a good time, Mr. Bovet, for the county commissioners to weigh in on some of the things that they would like to see staff be working on, or do you want to save that for another work session in the future?
You know,
Mr. Mokryski, you want to weigh in as well?
I guess it really just depends on time, and I know you're pressed up against a 10 a.m. set time, so if you certainly wanted to give us some inclination of what you'd like us to work on, I can lay out various options right now, but they're only in the generic, which is basically we can issue a new RFP from the county itself and solicit folks to apply to be your hearings officers. We can work with LCOG to have them do likewise. I think traditionally in Lane County, you've worked through LCOG and contracted with LCOG to do that work essentially for us and provide us with the hearings officers. I mean, there's a bunch of different models. There's 36 different models in Oregon as to how counties go about this.
Yes, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bovet. I'm fine with pushing this off if we're not prepared to take action and don't have all the information we need. And I guess in the interest of time, since the chair maybe has some input he'd like to give, I'm assuming this is push it to later, and I know staff is always available for questions. I would encourage each of us to maybe just think through what are those questions, and maybe you could share some of what you just rolled out, but in an email to get us thinking, and then we can reply with, here are the things we want to make sure are covered or that we understand, so that when the item does come back to us, it's prefaced with some of our considerations in mind, so we're not putting folks on the spot, because that could take a while, and we do have the time certain in one item still. So that would be a request/proposal for how we manage this item.
All right, Commissioner Farr, thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing to say specifically about this, but it does give an opportunity to talk about the fact that we do have a Council of Governments in Lane County. Not all counties have that. That's
true.
And we rely on LCOG for so many different things that we would have to completely administer ourselves. Washington County, for instance, does not have a COG, so they have to do everything themselves. So we're fortunate that we have a COG. We're fortunate that they do the tremendous amount of work, and I'm not even going to begin to talk about the things that they do. So just want to point out that we are fortunate to have LCOG. Not all counties have such a tool, such a organization, and in that it does represent virtually all governments in Lane County. There is no more broad group that we work with than LCOG, so thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, just quickly, I kind of like the idea of exploring some different options, maybe checking with some of our comparator counties, and coming back with that. I don't know if that would be like a future discussion before we moved forward again, kind of like Commissioner Trieger was saying, but yeah, I would like to learn more about this process, just overall.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you. And well, I think it's a good time. I think Commissioner Trieger's suggestion of getting it in an email and getting us kind of structured some comments would put us on track a little better.
I'll work with Public Works to get that done.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. All right. Well, good. Thank you very much. Thanks for that item. We do have a 9:40 soft time that we're doing pretty well on. Our County Administration Item Order 25061012 in the matter of approval of the Oregon Strategic Investment Program Agreement between Lane County and Sierra Pacific Industries, and a request that the Oregon Business Development Commission determined under ORS 285C.6061 that the Eugene Sawmill be exempt from property taxation under ORS 307.123. And with us is Jason Harris to give us that information for a vote. Jason, how are you today?
Hello, Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. Thank you for taking this item. I'm here to present a strategic investment program application and proposed terms of a strategic investment program agreement with Sierra Pacific Industries. This is in response to Sierra Pacific Industries' proposed capital investment to their Eugene Sawmill. The company is looking to utilize a state property tax exemption program. Again, the strategic investment program. We use the acronym SIP just for brevity. Here's a presentation this morning on the overall business terms. I am cognizant of the time frame that we're under, so I'll be relatively quick, but I also did want to provide a comprehensive overview of this application and the proposed terms for the public that may just be viewing this for the first time. As the board may recall, there was a public hearing 3 weeks ago on May 20th, of which this item was called into public record, and we had 4 members of the public that spoke in favor. So with that, I'll go into the presentation. The Strategic Investment Program, again, is a state property tax exemption. Unlike the Enterprise Zone Program, which also provides a property tax exemption, this program is not geographically constrained to specific geographic boundaries or project areas, but is available anywhere in Oregon for traded sector businesses making large capital investments. For that purpose, for urban areas, the investment must be $150 million, or for rural areas, $40 million. In this case, the Sierra Pacific Eugene Sawmill is considered an urban area. They are proposing a $253 million capital investment, thus qualifying. As we have presented in the past, this program is unique in the context that does provide some tax exemption on the new investment only. However, the first $100 million is taxed and has an incremental growth of 3% over the 15-year SIP term. And even though there is no employment requirement, there is a first source hiring agreement with the state that is required. The program also has a unique factor in which any tax savings above that initial tax threshold, so in this case, the $153 million of additional investment would be applicable to this community service fee of 25%, and then that fee is distributed out to the taxing districts within the project area, except for the school districts. And those entities are Lane Fire, obviously Lane County's a part of that, Junction City Water Control District, and the Upper Willamette and Soil and Water District. The Eugene Sawmill has approximately 347 employees, 3 sawmills, a cogen renewal power facility, recently made an $8 million fabrication and trucking facility investment that is now hitting the tax rolls. We began this conversation of the proposed SIP application in early 2024. As highlighted earlier in my remarks, the company's proposing a $253 million investment. Modernizations, modifications, and replacements of existing improvements and facility equipment is going to improve project safety on site and increase operational flexibility for the company. They plan to maintain all their employees throughout the construction sequencing and going forward. Again, the location's at 9201 North Highway 99, just east of the Eugene Airport on Highway 99, about a 150-acre site. And as highlighted in the opening remarks on just how the construct of this tax exemption program works, I've pulled out the highlight top line tax estimations for awareness. So again, this is a 15-year period of time of which new improvements would be abated. However, the existing tax basis of the property will continue to be paid and obligated by the company on land and existing improvements. That's estimated to generate $24.5 million going forward over this 15-year period. The additional improvements that are taxed at $100 million of additional new investment would be taxed, and again, at that 3% rate, we're estimating that to generate just under $20 million in additional new additional property tax. And then taking just kind of the gross tax savings of that basis is estimated to be about $7.9 million, of which then the company is obligated to pay a 25% community service fee on that amount, which would equate to $2 million. These are all estimates. Ultimately, the Department of Revenue does an annual property assessment. The company will be submitting an assessment and taxation, would be reviewing all of these data points. Ultimately, the company is expected to pay $46.4 million in overall tax and community service fee payments over that 15-year term, comparatively to the $52.3 million that the company would pay without the SIP, providing a net savings of $5.9 million. So as a part of this, that's kind of all the statutory under Oregon State law. The company has provided a proposed voluntary community benefit payment to the county to go towards public services at the county's discretion on how they would like to receive those funds. They've proposed a $525,000 one-time payment at the project occupancy, or a $35,000 annual payment over the 15-year term. The company's also offered a one-time administrative fee payment to the county to cover administrative costs, as well as committing to performance guarantees of employment, maintaining employment and operations throughout the SIP term, as well as committing to, at a minimum, $150 million investment in completing that initial investment over by 2028. Just in the context of the community benefit payment, staff is recommending the board select the one-time payment if they are in support of this item going forward, just from a time value of money and administrative ease in that context. And then just to give you a sense of kind of overall timeline and where we are at in the process, we're about halfway through at this point. If the board does agree and support this item, we would be forwarding the board order and the SIP agreement to the Oregon Business Development Commission. This is the state's economic development agency's commission that makes a final determination. They've have received the application, and they're just pending final approval based upon approval from the board, if the board's so willing to. Following that, there's a 90-day time period of which the county would enter into a community or intergovernmental agreement with the taxing districts to distribute that community service fee that I spoke to earlier, and so we'd be returning with that action later this summer. And with that, there's really 3 board considerations for board action today. One, the board could move approval of the SIP agreement and request the Oregon Business Development Commission's determination of eligibility. Alternatively, the board could request Sierra Pacific and the county negotiate and consider alternative business terms of a SIP agreement. Or thirdly, the board could reject the proposed terms and direct staff for alternative options. As highlighted in the staff memo, staff's recommending option 1. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. I will acknowledge that there is a Sierra Pacific Industries representative in the audience if there was ever a need for any questions to the company. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open the item for questions and discussions with the board. Thank you.
Great. Well done, Mr. Harris. You've stuck with this project a long time. Good work. Any questions or comments from staff or for staff from the board? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. At our last work session, I didn't say too much, but I thought today was a good day to at least share my thoughts. I absolutely want to see companies invest in Lane County, and so that is a positive for us. My only hesitation to this particular program is that I don't think the board majority negotiated as well as they could have on the community benefit payment of $525,000. I lobbied pretty hard for ongoing funding for Rural Patrol. I would have liked to have seen $100,000 a year on an ongoing basis that would have gone towards Rural Patrol because we just don't have enough funding for that. And there's an excess here. The overall $19.9 million in taxes over the 15 years is a good thing. Ultimately, the county only gets 11 cents on the dollar of that, which is about a little over $2.1 million. Divided by 15 years, we're getting maybe $145,000 a year. So it's nominal for the county of the investment. On the other hand, I'm not going to deny the other special taxing districts the remainder of the money because I feel like we at the county could have negotiated better. I want to see the investment. I want to see the growth of industry in our county, and I want to see additional funding come in to crucial county agencies and partnering agencies in the area. So for that reason, I will support this project, but I wanted to at least present my concerns so that the partner knows where I was coming from and my colleagues know where I was coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. You know, I appreciate Commissioner Buck bringing up Rural Patrol. It's something we should talk about as often as we can and finding ways to support Rural Patrol. You know that when you dial the Sheriff's Department, you hope and wish that you get a deputy in response, and we know for a fact that that doesn't happen right now. We need to talk about this very often, and it is a conversation that we had during the deliberation. But I think I'm prepared to move ahead with the, as is Commissioner Buck, prepared to move ahead with the agreement. And I think that Sierra Pacific's long-term investment in Lane County is evident in this agreement. And I think that Lane County and the other jurisdictions are getting a good return, and the return doesn't stop giving into perpetuity. So I am in favor of this, and I want to thank you personally for bringing this to us and for working diligently on getting toward this outcome. Thanks.
If there's no other question, I just have one, Mr. Harris, is that part of the motion, do you want us to also include that select one-time payment of $525,000 of the community service fee? It wasn't in the original packet, but I was just curious if that should be included in the motion.
Chair, that'd be helpful, just acknowledging, and I could work with council to incorporate that in the agreement.
Okay, great, thank you. So if there's no other comments or questions for Mr. Harris, $525,000 for the community service fee. So if there's no other questions or comments, I'll be looking for a motion for pass this item. I'll put it on the floor.
Chair, I've got a motion.
Yes, please.
I move to approve Order 25061012 in the matter of approval of our Oregon Strategic Investment Program Agreement between Lane County and Sierra Pacific Industries, and a request that Oregon Business Development Commission determine under ORS 285C.6061 that the Eugene Sawmill be exempt from property taxation under ORS 307.123, including $525,000 for a community service fee.
Great. Do I have a second to that? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Harris, go ahead.
Chair, if I could just correct the record, the 525 is the community benefit fee. Apologies. Thank you for that.
Okay, correction noted. Do I have a second to the motion?
After delay, waiting for another second, I will second.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So it's been moved by Vice Chair, Order 25061012 in the matter of Oregon Strategic Investment Program Agreement between Lane County and Sierra Pacific Industries, and request that the Oregon Business Development Commission determine under ORS 285C.6061 that the Eugene Sawmill be exempt from property taxation under ORS 307.123 per board order, as I previously mentioned, and select a one-time payment of $525,000 in a community benefit fee. It's been moved and seconded by the board, by Vice Chair, and by Commissioner Fard. Is there any discussion to the motion? Yes, Vice Chair.
Just quickly, I want to say thank you to everybody that worked so hard on this, Mr. Harris, SPI, and I do want to second Commissioner Buck's concerns about rural patrol. That is a huge thing we need to work on, and I listened to staff, and I believe that we did a good faith negotiation here, and I'm happy with these numbers, so thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the current amount of $525,000 is dedicated to going towards rural patrol at this time. It's not in the motion, but that is my understanding of the negotiation.
I guess I'd turn to council to see if we need to maybe modify that motion to be specific. Sir, what do you think, Councilor Robb? That's okay. We were, Commissioner Buck had made a concern about the one-time payment of $525,000, the community benefit fee being added to the motion. If it should be specified that it is to rural patrol in the motion so that it doesn't obviously disappear somewhere else. Well, that's our question. Should it be specified as to where it goes? Right. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. All right, so do we want to modify the motion? Maker of the motion want to modify?
Yes, can I amend and modify my motion, please?
Yes, please.
I move to approve Order 25061012 in the matter of approval of Oregon Strategic Investment Program Agreement between Lane County and Sierra Pacific Industries, and a request that the Oregon Business Development Commission determine under ORS .6061, that the Eugene Sawmill be exempt from property taxation under ORS 307.123 with a one-time payment of $525,000 in community benefit fee for rural patrol. Thank you.
And do I have a second to that modified motion?
Second with a question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you to the motion and the seconded motion. Mr. Harris, that is consistent with the deliberation that we've had throughout the process.
Chair, Vice Chair, Commissions, yes. I think specifying is consistent as to the conversations of the business terms.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 in the matter of approving the the Oregon Strategic Investment Program with Sierra Pacific, order number 25061012, in the community benefit package. Jason, take a bow. Mr. Harris, good work. Thank you very much. All right, I'd like to recess the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and open the Board of Health. This is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. This is our item of our semi-annual report from the Board of Health. Our Health and Human Services Director, Eve Gray, is in the background, but also I see Dr. Ludke with us. Good day, sir. And I see Kachina Inman with us as well. You're going to be pinch hitting for Ms. Jocelyn Warren, I presume? Or she's there right there. Look at that. Wow, you snuck right in. Good for you. Well, we have a great panel in front of us. Dr. Warren, we are thrilled with hearing this report, and whenever you're ready, you go ahead.
Clarification, Chair, I beg your pardon. This is a joint meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Health.
Joint meeting, thank you very much. The joint meeting of the Board of Health and County Commissioners, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Lovell. Yes, we're here today to present our semi-annual Board of Health report. Today we have a two-parter. We have part one, which I will be presenting, which is an overview of the health status in Lane County. This piece is really a preparation for a presentation that we'll be doing in July about the community health assessment, which is a year-long process and for which we have collected a lot of data. So in order to not overwhelm you in the July presentation, hoping to provide a little context today. So we'll do a high-level overview of population health. It's actually from the County Health Rankings and Roadmap website, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There are some limitations of this data as well that I just want to highlight. These data are primarily from 2022, and that is just a common limitation using existing national and population data sources. It takes some time to put those data together, and by the time they come to us, they are typically a few years distant. Dr. Ludke will be using some data on vaccination that's more recent than that. Yeah, in part two then, Dr. Ludke will be presenting on a hot topic, vaccines, and he'll provide a broad perspective and some information specific to Lane County. So we will start with the overview of Lane County demographics and a comparison with the Oregon averages. Compared with Oregon, Lane County has greater proportions of older adults, those who identify as non-Hispanic white, those who have a functional disability, children living in single-parent households. And compared with Oregon, we have lower proportions of those who are not proficient in English and who are living in rural areas. So many things contribute to people's health, as you know. We know genetics play some part, good medical care contributes to some health outcomes, and many of these are considered smaller kind of proportions of what makes up health. What we know that over the research of the last 20 years that are the larger contributors to health are the social determinants of health. That includes housing access, access to healthy foods, safe schools and neighborhoods, an income that is sufficient to meet basic needs. These conditions are the primary drivers of health, and these conditions themselves then are determined in part by policy, planning, and funding decisions that are made at the local, state, and federal levels in the past and in the present. So this is the model of health that we're going to be referring to, and our focus today is on population health and well-being. So this is the overall picture of health in our community. This model synthesizes the research on health and its determinants over the last 30 years. The focus today are these two factors, length of life and quality of life, that contribute to the population health and well-being measure for this model. This model is put together by as I mentioned, the County Health Rankings, which is a project of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. It is hosted at the population, let me see, make sure I have that right. It's the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. So they've been doing this work for many years, and it's really a terrific resource because you can compare how Lane County is doing with other counties in Oregon. It's not really meant to compare states or meant to compare counties outside of states, but there are groupings to help you understand how you compare to other places in your own county. So we're going to start, this is from the overall population health and well-being. We're going to start kind of broad and then kind of drill down a little bit. So Lane County is faring about the same as the average county in Oregon for population health and well-being, and slightly better than the average county in the nation. And we'll talk a little bit more about what makes that up. But first, I just wanted to show one of these very handy, useful maps that shows the kind of distribution of population health and well-being across the state here. This says population health and well-being 2025, and I want to be really clear that these are the data that are put together this year and released by the Population Health Institute. However, they depend on data that are collected over a number of years, as we will see through the individual measures. So this map illustrates the overall population and health of well-being in Lane County. Darker means better overall health and well-being. Again, so what you see basically is Lane County sort of there in the middle. So we have counties with much better health, and you'll see those in darker green. What we don't have in Oregon are counties that would have very poor health overall, which would be represented in that yellow color towards on the key there at the left-hand side. So back to the model. We're going to look at the length of life is a factor. It's one of the two that make up population health and well-being, so we're going to explore that one a little bit. Length of life in this measure is measured as premature or preventable death, and that includes all deaths before age 75. When you're doing years of potential life lost, you can choose a cut point, and 75 is a very common cut point for determining years of potential life lost. The other thing to know about this is it's age adjusted, so that means that deaths in younger people count for more in a calculation. For example, a death at 55 is counted twice as much as a death at 65. And the years for this measure are from 2020 through 2022, and the years are calculated as a sum across all deaths prior to age 75. So if you look at the top there, you'll see that Lane County, the measure for Lane County is 8,100 years per life lost. The Oregon average is 7,200, so we're higher than that, which is not good. Higher is bad in this case, and but lower than the United States average, which is 8,400. And again, we see a similar distribution across counties in Oregon. So I want to talk a little bit about the top 5 leading causes of death. Now, they have a lot of information in this slide, so I'll try to walk through it a little to be more clear. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. Sorry, we're going to look at this slide first. So this one's not too bad, actually. This is years of potential life lost with 5 comparator counties. So we've got Clackamas, Deschutes, Jackson, Marion, and Washington. As you can see, this trend continues where Lane County is doing better than the U.S. overall, but not necessarily better than the Oregon average. In fact, we look most similar to Jackson County. So this is the slide that starts to get a little more complex. This combines data over 2020 to 2022. Represents the leading 5 causes of death for each county. So where there are bars missing, that means that the condition or disease is not a leading cause of death for that county. So leading causes of death under age 75 in Lane County were cancer, heart disease, accident or unintentional injury, chronic lower respiratory diseases, and intentional self-harm. Notably, COVID-19 was not among the top 5 causes of premature death in Lane County during these years. However, COVID-19 was either 4th or 5th among the top 5 causes of premature death in all 5 comparator counties. The top 3 leading causes of death under age 75, which are cancer, heart disease, and accidents, were the same across Lane and the comparator counties. Diabetes was a leading cause of death in Clackamas and Marion counties. Intentional self-harm was also a leading cause of death in Deschutes and Washington counties. Only Lane and Jackson counties had chronic lower respiratory diseases among the 5 leading causes of death. Life expectancy is also a commonly used measure of length of life, and it's a lot easier to understand sometimes than years of potential life loss. It makes more intuitive sense. This chart actually is lifted from our community health assessment, which you'll be hearing a lot more about in July. Lane County is the blue line, and Oregon is the orange line. Life expectancy had been trending ever so slightly, occasionally upward for the last 20 years, but then you see a remarkable decline around 2019, 2020 specifically. That has to do with drug overdoses and COVID-19 primarily, although there are other contributors. One thing I want to highlight also are differences between racial ethnic groups in Lane County in life expectancy. So at the very bottom, you'll see the average for Lane County is 77.1 years. And then there's a pretty significant variation between groups on life expectancy, starting with non-Hispanic white at 76.6 years, non-Hispanic black at 74.6 years, non-Hispanic Asian at 85.3, non-Hispanic American Indian, Alaskan Native at 76.9, and Hispanic of all races at 83.1. Now we're going to go back to the model and talk a little bit more about quality of life. And there are actually several kind of factors that go into quality of life. 3 of them are self-reported and taken from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, also called BRFIS. This is from the year 2022. And people were asked to rate among the previous 30 days the number in which they experienced poor physical health and poor mental health, and then how they would rate their own health in terms of excellent to poor. And the percentage that we're reporting are those who self-rated their health as either poor or fair. So we have another slide that's a little busy, but bear with me. We want to be able to also include our comparator counties to see the variation between those. And again, higher numbers are worse. So we're seeing more poor mental health or poor physical health or self-rated poor or fair health. Lane County is the green bar on this graph. 4.6 poor physical health days out of the last 30, 6.6 poor mental health days out of the last 30, and 20% of people in the Lane County group say their health is fair or poor. Patterns, once again, if you look at Jackson is red, very similar to Lane County again. Clackamas is purple. Actually, Clackamas tends to fare a little bit better than Lane County in these. This information is not available from BRFIS by race and ethnicity. So finally, we have one other measure of quality of life, and that is low birth weight. This is also a very commonly used measure because it reflects a lot of the social determinants of health, access to nutrition and housing and poverty and stress. So it's often used as a proxy for quality of life. And it refers to the percent of babies born between the years, in this case, the years are 2017 through 2023, that were less than 2,500 grams, or about 5.5 pounds in weight. So we see the county averages, and I do want to mention as well, so for some groups, when there are low numbers, the National Vital Statistics System does not report those numbers, and so that's why you will see an asterisk there. I want to highlight that if you look across counties and look at the averages, they are 7 or 6. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of variation, but where you really do see a lot more variation is between racial and ethnic group.
Excuse me, Dr. Warren, would be a good time for a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Commissioner, please.
Is it per some number of births? What does the number mean?
Oh, I'm
7,
sorry.
8, 9.
It's percent of births in
Percent of all births.
all births across
that
that
time period.
timeline.
Okay.
Across
So
those
it's an
years.
average taken across all those years?
Yes.
So there could have been 1 year or 2, I mean, that's a fairly large
Absolutely.
span of years. So it could be,
And the intention behind that is to have enough to be able to represent these subgroups too in a meaningful way. And it still is not enough for some subgroups in some areas, but.
and I would imagine, and it's completely fine and reasonable that this level of drilling down isn't being presented here for us, but that year by year information is available to look at trends and try to connect to loss of, like we've had birthing centers close, and I mean, the quality and variety of prenatal care that's available here in Lane County, for instance, has dramatically changed in this period of time and moving forward, for example. So I assume that level of data is available and something you all look at, and just not a degree of detail we're
I'm
looking.
glad you mentioned that because in some cases, those data are not available. If there are really small numbers, it depends. But what we do have is a great deal more data in the community health assessment. And that type of issue is one of the things that we are really excited about being able to include in the community health assessment. These data are by nature limited. They are just population health outcomes. We don't have a why here. We don't know what the contributing factors are necessarily. There is certainly a lot of research into a lot of these specific areas that you can pull in and make some conclusions about what's happening in Lane County. But the great thing about the community health assessment is that we're also asking people, what is your experience? If you are a member of this group and you have had even maybe a low birth weight experience, what contributed to that? So I think that is one of the really exciting things about this community health assessment is we have so much more community engagement than we've had in the past. So we will be able to dig into some of those questions. So I also encourage you to think about what your questions are for the community health assessment too, that you would like to do some kind of additional digging into in July. And we can certainly, if you want to share those in advance, we can certainly come prepared to speak about those things, or we can also kind of do it in the work session as well. But this was intended to be, and this is actually the last data slide, but intended to be sort of an overarching kind of here is where Lane County is. But there's so much more, obviously, going on. And some of the assessment also kind of looks into the environment and context in each of our communities in Lane County. So we'll be bringing that as well.
Thank you. And I bring it up mostly for our benefit to be thinking about how this data and what we're learning from it and what you present relates to other priorities that we set around legislative actions that we prioritize, funding decisions around things like our family and child health programs, and what we're hearing back from community, like I said, particularly about closure of birth centers and more limited options for prenatal care and healthcare access in general. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that was actually my conclusion, was to get us excited about the community health assessment discussion in July. So now I am going to pass it to Dr. Lutke, who's going to talk about vaccines, and he also has some more recent data than 2022 that he can share as well.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Chair Lovell, thank you as well, and commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to join you. When we submitted this, Jocelyn and I, our goal was to look at a deep data dive, and then maybe I would do sort of a shallow swim around vaccines. And unfortunately, sometimes things change. I'm assuming in your life things change too. There have been some significant changes at the federal level and recommendations. So I'm going to do a little bit of an insert of responses to some of those changes. So I want to start with this picture, and no, this is not a lineup of people trying to get into the Taylor Swift concert. I'm sure there's Swifties amongst us. This is from a polio vaccine clinic from my vintage, 1959. People waiting to get that Salk or Sabin vaccine that was only approved a couple of years before that. And that vaccine, well, both of those vaccines have been very effective, and I think many people believe that polio is gone from planet Earth, and it is not. I went to school. I'm old enough to have gone to school with some of my fellow students who had polio. A couple of my teachers did as well, unfortunately. And it has returned. Next slide, please. So I suspect some of you heard what happened in New York City and the ongoing response to it. In 2022, an unvaccinated younger gentleman in his 20s who had not traveled outside of the area got paralytic polio, which is something that we hadn't seen in America for quite some time, and we were hoping we would not see because our vaccine rates in polio are pretty high. Unfortunately, polio was circulating. You can see the second bullet on this slide. Sewage testing was done. Polio is a virus that passes through the GI tract, ends up in the feces. You can find it in the sewage, and they ended up finding it in New York City and 5 surrounding counties. So what did they do? The same thing that we would do if it happened here in Lane County. We would do a massive campaign to try to get people vaccinated and to work with our clinical community to address this issue. New York City did just that. New York State did just that. They are still doing it, unfortunately, because they're still finding polio in sewage. Next slide, please. A parallel to that, another virus that still circulates, unfortunately, which doesn't cause paralysis typically, but can cause other severe problems, is mumps. A commonality amongst both of these viruses, really very little has changed with regards to the armamentarium, the bullets that we have to fight these two viruses. We have no antivirals for mumps. You get mumps, you got it. If you have pain, we give you Motrin, but we can't prevent it. We can't cure it. Same thing with polio. We have no antiviral, no antibiotics for polio. The disease takes its course. So in 2014, there was a large outbreak in the United States. It was predominantly centered on the other OSU, Ohio State University. And amongst the large number of patients that they had, one of the items that really caught my eye was thinking about, I had a couple kids in college at the time, and one of the 21-year-olds who was about ready to graduate, this happened in the springtime, ended up with bilateral deafness. Now he's deaf for life at age 21, which is just thinking, this is what mumps does. In my age group, younger age, mumps was the #1 cause of deafness in America. Vaccination has prevented that, is no longer the #1 cause of deafness in America, but it was for many, many years. Here we have a gentleman, sadly, who endured that problem. So I was going to shift from there to Lane County vaccines initially, and then some of these federal changes occurred, and we received a whole lot of queries at the health department from the clinical community. What's public health going to do about this? What is the county going to do about these changes? What are going to be the recommendations around various vaccines? So I think, as you know, about 2 weeks ago, the Federal Department of Health and Human Services made some changes to the COVID vaccine recommendations. And we, as I said, had a flurry of those clinical questions, and I thought it'd be reasonable to address some of those. Next slide, please. So in response, some of the scientific-based agencies wanted to reiterate their recommendations. And AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, has made it very clear, and I put these in quotes, these are directly from the AAP, their recommendations around vaccination for kids. They still recommend it for ages 6 months and above, as do many other countries. Not all, though. Not all countries do, but many do. And American Academy of Pediatrics strongly recommends the immunization protocols that have been promulgated over the years in the past. And this is based upon, next slide please, a variety of data. And in kids, most kids don't get severe illness from COVID. Some do, but most don't, which is a good thing. I suspect some of you have heard of MIS-C, the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. It's one of those terrible things that some kids, a very small percentage of kids, get from COVID. And there have been several large studies showing that this indeed does happen, and the risk is markedly higher if children are unvaccinated. And you can see a couple of these age groups, age 5 to 11, looking at about 2 million unvaccinated, and about 1.2 million vaccinated. And you can see the risk in the unvaccinated of getting this rare but very severe problem from COVID is about 3.5 times higher. And in the adolescent age group, 12 to 17, it's about 23 times higher. So 2,300% higher and 330% higher, depending upon the age group. And again, it's not common. This is a fairly uncommon side effect from getting the infection of COVID, but our pediatric practices see it each year, and Dornbecker up in the Portland area unfortunately has a fair number of kids each year getting MIS-C. Next slide. So kids also get long COVID. And early in the pandemic, we really didn't look at kids. We didn't have many vaccines. We had, if you remember, in 2020, 2021, we had a very small number of tests. We were focusing tests on the highest risk people, typically the elderly. And we now have longer term data. This is a recent study looking over the course of the lifetime of 14 different symptoms linked to long COVID, and what is the percentage of kids in those similar age groups, 6 to 11 and 12 to 17. Kids get long COVID too, unfortunately. About 1 million children in America have long COVID. Most of them get it, last 6 to 12 months, and they get over it. They tend to be more recoverable than elderly adults whose long COVID might last longer, but kids get it too, unfortunately. And we have recommendations to continue this vaccination based also on the long COVID risk. Next slide. So in the obstetric space, ACOG is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Again, these are direct quotes from their recommendations. And there were changes from Federal Health and Human Services on recommendations for vaccine during pregnancy. The science continues to say that vaccines in pregnancy are not only safe but effective. And I'll just read the middle bullet from ACOG. COVID-19 vaccines are recommended for everyone aged 6 months and older, including those who are pregnant, postpartum, breastfeeding, or planning a pregnancy. And that is what the clinical community is working towards and will continue to act upon. Next slide. So some of the data supporting that, again, very large studies. And if they were small studies, 10, 20, 40 people, not statistically significant, these are studies that if you throw them together and do what we call a meta-analysis, you could perhaps get statistical significance. But there's a lot of large studies across multiple countries showing the value of COVID vaccines in pregnant women. I just cited a few of them. Again, very large studies. United Kingdom, over 2 million births, looking at statistical challenges in women who are pregnant who got COVID. And there are significant increases in preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. Of course, the fetus is affected with neonatal intensive care, hospitalization, and preterm births. A study in Canada, a little over 400,000 pregnancies, very similar outcomes, which is interesting. And the US study, 1.5 million roughly, similar outcomes as well. COVID can cause problems in pregnancy, and this is one of the reasons that ACOG is continuing to recommend this vaccine in pregnant persons. Next slide. So I'm going to shift from there. And again, that was thrown in after we submitted this packet to you because of the recent changes. But Jocelyn and I wanted to finish on, so where are we in Lane County? Where are we right now and where are our risks? Next slide, please. And we have vaccine preventable illnesses in this county, like most of the 3,000 counties in America have some each year. We don't have millions of them, which is a good thing. We have prevented many of them because of our vaccine rate and because of other good things done by the Board of Health, done by the clinical community. To give you an example, this is data from 2016 to the present up through beginning of 2025 data. Measles, we've only had one case since then, thankfully. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. One measles case can be a real problem, but we've only had one. Oregon's had 65. Meningococcal disease, some of you will remember that 2015 was with the University of Oregon had a big outbreak. So this is just after that big outbreak. We've had 5 cases of meningococcal disease. You can see Mpox. Of course, we have a lot more whooping cough or pertussis. And we've had, in this time period, we had a 2018 big outbreak in Lane County. And then, of course, we've had one over the last 12 months, fairly large as well. This doesn't include the STIs. I know you're sick of us talking about sexually transmitted infections, so we left those out. But these are some of the vaccine preventable conditions. Next slide. So in terms of our vaccine rates, one more before the vaccine rate. So this is, how good are the vaccines? Vaccines are not perfect. Many of the vaccines are quite good, but again, they're not perfect. And they are different. Some vaccines you have to get every year if you want maximum protection, like the flu vaccine, because that darn virus just keeps mutating. Others, the same vaccine we've used for many, many years, like the measles vaccine. So this is data for the United States looking at what was a typical year, the number of cases we had reported each year before the vaccine became available, and they all became available at different times? And then how many cases have we had since the vaccine became available and was widely used? And this was reported in 2007 in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So on the left-hand side is the disease. The next column is the number of those reported cases. The third column over is how many cases in the year of 2006 in the United States. And then last is what was the percent decrease. And you can see some of our vaccines are really good. We don't have smallpox circulating on planet Earth anymore. It's the only microbiological entity we've ever eradicated from planet Earth, which is a good thing. And it was because of what's called ring vaccination, a great vaccine. As I mentioned at the outset, we used to have a lot of paralytic polio in the United States, between 10 and 20,000 cases in any given year. We've had 0 cases until 2022. We had that one case I mentioned earlier. And you can see the others on the list. Diphtheria used to be very common. Gosh, my mom, who's in her 90s now, she lost some of her friends in childhood from diphtheria. And that was a fairly common infection, unfortunately, which led to severe disease. If you watch It's a Wonderful Life, there's a little diphtheria thing in there, and there's also a 1918 influenza pandemic in It's a Wonderful Life, which always makes me kind of smile when I watch that movie each holiday season. So typical year pre-vaccine, we had about 500,000 reported measles cases in the United States. Probably had 5 to 6 times that many because many people get measles and will not report it. So probably 3 to 4 million cases per year. And since the vaccine, we've averaged, 50, 60, 80 a year in the United States until this year, where we've recently broke 1,000, again, because our vaccine rates have been dropping. So you can tease through each of these slides. You can see at the very bottom, the whooping cough vaccine. It's probably our least good regular or routine vaccine. Immunity's pretty good initially, and it wanes over 3 to 5 years. Then you need a booster, and it's just a challenge. We need a better vaccine, but it's the vaccine that we have. So final slide is where are we today? And this is 7 years of data.
You're going really quick. We have a question infused in there just one time for the Vice Chair.
Do you want to?
Anytime.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I want to preface this with great report, Ms. Warren. I've got about 6 questions that are X'd out because you were answering them as we were going. So great. But something that would be very helpful on this is if you had the year that the reported cases before the vaccine, maybe posted up there. So you had a number to go by. It would be really interesting to know, because I don't know when these vaccines came out and what year that reporting was. Is that something that...
We can certainly do that. Can I give them all the top of my head? No.
No, I hope not.
Smallpox, last case on planet Earth was 1981. Polio, 1955. Diphtheria was earlier than that, I don't remember. Measles is kind of a challenge because we recommended one vaccine for a long time, and then we had outbreaks, and we realized there's decaying immunity. So in 1989, the recommendation became 2 vaccines, and then you're done for life. So it changed in 1989. So that's the year for measles. Congenital rubella syndrome, 1962 is the year. Anybody who was alive then, I'm barely remembering 1962, but I was alive. There was, sadly, a huge number of congenital rubella cases, which is why the vaccine became recommended. And it causes severe malformations, and the child has problems for the rest of their life. Mumps, I can't recall, but we can do that, and we can send you the finals for that.
Yeah, I didn't mean for that to be an on-the-fly trivia, but that was very impressive. Thanks, Dr.
Okay, so where are we today? So this is 7 years of data. I love the way Jocelyn put in the colors. Thank you. So starting in 2018, and on the left-hand side, we have these routine childhood vaccines. You get 4 doses of one, 3 doses of another. So that's the 4-3-1, 3-3-1-4. It's just sort of, I guess it's public health jargon. But individual vaccines, the second column is the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine. The A is acellular pertussis. And you can see that if you look over the pandemic, most of these graphs, they've all declined a little bit over the years of the pandemic. And I think you probably heard me say before, we moved to telehealth during the pandemic. Telehealth has provided increased access to a provider, which is a good thing. But no matter how good you are as a provider, you can't give a shot over a computer screen. So it's kind of no surprise that the vaccine rates have dropped a bit. Now, if you look at the very last year, which is 2024, a couple of them have gone up just a tad, which gives us a little bit of hope. that, yes, we've invited risk into our community by these dropping vaccine rates, but maybe post-pandemic, things are getting a little better, there's a little more access to health care, et cetera. But this is where we stand today. For some diseases like measles, and towards the middle, MMR is the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. You need a really high rate of vaccine to prevent those large outbreaks. And for example, if you look in West Texas, where this measles outbreak is really centered right now in eastern New Mexico, their vaccination rate is in the 70%. And they've really opened their community to risk for measles, and that's why they've had a lot of cases. We're not going to have a lot of cases in Lane County. We don't have a perfect measles vaccine rate, but we're in the mid-90s by the time there's adolescent age, which is good. We might get a few cases, but we're not going to have hundreds like West Texas has had, which is a good thing. But we have other risks based upon our current vaccine rate. So I'm going to stop there. Happy to take further comments or criticisms.
Yes, Commissioner Farr.
You know, I'm always fascinated, Dr. Ludke, by your presentation of data and the probability and the reduction in probability through vaccination. You know, the reduction in probability of contraction of diseases. And there's one that really jumped out to me, and that is pertussis, and that's on table 3, where Lane County has far more than our share of pertussis. According to my estimates, someplace between 3 times and 4 times as much as we should have, based on the state numbers. And I think back on discussions that we had prior to 2018, where there was a pertussis outbreak, and where we had a large number of parents came to us on a regular basis asking that we allow their kids to go to school even though they were unvaccinated. And I'm wondering, Commissioner Seneca just asked you for data on the fly. I don't really expect any data on this, but I wonder that spike in pertussis that we had, that no doubt was a part of the outbreak that was centered here, I wonder how much of that had to do with unvaccinated kids in schools. And even though we did place a restriction at that point in time, and I think I probably was the only one on the Board of Commissioners at the time, place a restriction. I don't know if kids in schools were a part of that, and it's probably unfair to ask you to comment on it, and it is deep in history. But looking at the future, how do we use this data to make sure that people understand the power of the reduction of probability by vaccinating?
Oh my, there's a lot there. I think maybe Jocelyn and I will come back for a 2-hour session just on whooping cough.
Then I'll just keep on saying what I'm saying.
So I think what I would add is that looking forward, and your comment, Commissioner Farr, was how can we learn from this and do better, if I'm paraphrasing appropriately.
That's well done.
We need to learn from this. So in 2012, our state had a pretty large whooping cough outbreak. Lane County wasn't completely spared, but it was largely spared. We had a fair number of cases. Fast forward 6 years later, 2018, large outbreak in Lane County. Fair number of hospitalizations. We didn't have any baby deaths, which is pertussis. It doesn't kill adults or adolescents, it kills babies. We were lucky. But fast forward 6 more years, 2024, we had another huge outbreak, which is just now tapering off after a year. So shame on us if we're not looking at 2030 thinking we're at risk again every 6 years. And we know that pertussis is cyclical and you get a new birth cohort. Lane County has about 4,000 births every year. We have risky people because they're newborn, they haven't seen it before. So we have to learn from that. I think that's number one. Number two, we do know that the vaccine is good, but it isn't perfect, and immunity drops. So we really have to focus on the booster dose in those persons who are around high-risk people. Who's high risk? Babies. So that concentric circle of protection for babies. And anyone who's had a baby in their family recently, whether as a parent or a grandparent, knows that a fair number of parents and even hospitals, labor and delivery centers say you can't come here unless you're vaccinated, and that's part of the reason, is just to protect babies. So we do need to learn from this. We also need a better vaccine. The vaccine is, again, one of our least good routine vaccines.
Well, Dr. Lutke, sometimes I think you probably feel like you're crying in the wilderness because we're so, and I'll look at Dr. Warren, we're lucky to have him here, aren't we? Because you do pay attention to things that other people don't pay attention to, and you elevate our attention as well. In 2018, we had a baby in our household, a grandchild, and so my attention was elevated. But you do a superb job of turning what is raw data into a presentation that people can understand and can really take home, and really in a very salient way, understand the probability, how vastly the probability of infection is reduced by vaccination. So anyway, in short, you said that can we learn from the past to predict the future? I think we're in good hands with you doing that exactly for us, Dr. Ludke. Thank you for being here.
Yes, Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you for the presentation, as always. I'm wondering what, if anything, you are hearing differently, either in our clinics or from callers or from the community, given the conversation and the changes in recommendations from the federal level is, I think, creating some real confusion. I really appreciate our public health department has done incredible work to build relationship and trust with community. So I like to think that Lane County residents look to Lane County Public Health for, as Dr. Ludke frequently said in his presentation, what the scientific community recommends, what the clinical community recommends and is experiencing. But are you hearing from community more skepticism or confusion or questions given the conflicting recommendations coming out of the current federal administration versus what we have known and followed all along and what our own public health department is advising?
So, Commissioner, I'm happy to respond to this, and it's pretty timely, actually. Last night, we had our HERO meeting, and in this case, HERO stands for Health Roundtable, the first two letters of those two words. Maybe it's a little pretentious, but we kind of like the name. And it includes the senior leadership of the largest healthcare groups in our county. So our two CCOs, Pacific Source and Trillium, both hospital groups, McKenzie and Peace Health, as well as some of the larger multi-specialty practice groups like Optum, OMG, Kaiser, et cetera. And we've also had meetings over the last couple of weeks with other practices. And a two-part answer to your question, or a two-part response perhaps, those groups, especially the hospital groups, are very nervous about the fall. And we just came out of probably the worst influenza season in the last 15 years in the United States. Our county participated in that misery, unfortunately. Both of our hospitals were really significantly impacted. People who couldn't get in a room, so they were boarded for days out in the hallway on a gurney with terrible, influenza disease, a big challenge. And with these changes in vaccine recommendations and this unclear kind of murky water right now, they are already planning for a fall of misery. And this was a conversational topic last night with both hospitals and over the last couple of weeks. And with regard to the patient side, I still see patients. I don't see patients 40 hours a week anymore, but I still see patients. And I'm hearing from patients as well. Well, okay, we're hearing these changes. What should I do for me, my family? So providers are having more of those conversations. Absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Well, I would just, if I could, Chair, just to follow up, if there's ever an opportunity that it would be helpful for the board to take any kind of official position or weigh in on messaging or community communications out to community, please don't hesitate to bring that to us and let us know as we enter the fall of misery. That sounds great. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like a hoodie, a bad hoodie or something. Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of following up on that question, as a mom of a young child that has to take them in and get their physical every year, generally the provider is like, okay, we got to schedule this, and this shot for this year. With the change in the federal guidelines, are providers still going to ask the question, do you want to get this vaccine? Or do the parents need to request it? Is there some kind of hindrance now for providers who may personally want to recommend them, but are concerned about any particular backlash that they may receive?
So, Commissioner Buck, I think it's a very good question, and there's some uncertainty in this space. And it's essentially an administrative uncertainty right now. When the Affordable Care Act passed, the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is that CDC advisory committee that decides what to do with vaccines that have been FDA approved for safety and efficacy. When the Affordable Care Act passed, that committee, if it said this vaccine should be used in this way, private insurance companies had 12 months to build that into their system and then start to pay for it. Well, what's going to happen? We don't know for sure. That may unravel. It may be that the ACIP recommendations cease, and if there's not an ACIP recommendation, then insurance companies don't have to pay for it. If insurance companies don't have to pay for it, will it be promoted?
Right.
There's a lot of ifs there. So I don't know the answer to that. All I can say is we are looking at that potential unwinding, what that might look like, and then what will step into that potential void with regards to messaging and interpretation of the science. And I guess I'll say maybe one more thing that I think is worth saying. There are many vaccines that people ask us about, and the science doesn't support getting them. For example, you know, I've presented before that I was a Navy officer. We get vaccines in the military that lay community people don't get. There's an adenovirus vaccine, causes the common cold in every one of us. Everybody here has had an adenovirus common cold. The military gets it because you can decimate an entire troop and they can't fight. So you get that in boot camp. We will never give a third measles vaccine. There's no data to show that we should. Many people have been asking us during this measles outbreak in the United States, should we all go get a third vaccine? No, there's no data. Don't do it. So more vaccines is not always better, but those vaccines that have support behind them, we need to promote as best we can and figure out during this time of uncertainty, what's the best way to do that?
As a follow-up to your statement, I think my concern then turns towards if parents request a vaccine that a provider then concurs with, will they have to pay for it on their own?
They may, yes, indeed.
And that's a financial burden of health coverage that they may not be expecting unless the provider explicitly states, yes, but be prepared for the bill. And what that charge will be is a little unknown. And so part of what I think we can do as a board is prepare our residents for that potential outcome. Because it may be the COVID vaccine at one time, it may be a different vaccine at another time. But I know when I get those bills in the mail after appointment, I'm not always clear about what exactly they're charging and why, even though I get a lot of paperwork. So trying to prepare our residents for changes in their health insurance bills might be a place that we can assist with.
One thing I do want to say related to this topic is that I don't believe we have any intelligence from any insurance company that they see vaccination as something not worth covering. There might be a question mark with new vaccines that come out. We might not get as clear of recommendations when data is to the point where we might recommend a change to a vaccination schedule. Those are the types of things that I would be most concerned about right now, because insurance companies, as the risk-bearing entity, do not want to pay for the hospitalization. They would rather pay for all the vaccines than pay for the hospitalization. So they are motivated to continue to follow what is supported by professional associations like what Dr. Lugke shared. It's not a promise, but I also don't want to cause unnecessary anxiety for folks about their healthcare coverage. The other piece is that, of course, the state has options to require things as well. So if we were to start seeing a decline that was concerning, we would have the opportunity to advocate at the state level in order to assure that these things are covered within our own state.
Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that issue up, Commissioner Buck, and that prompts me to think, yes, private insurance, excellent point. Risk management says pay for the vaccine rather than hospitalization. But we all know changes to Medicaid are coming. And my understanding is nationally about half of all births are covered, patients through Medicaid, and also about half of all long-term care facility residents. And so if there are changes at the federal level to what is covered, and I don't know what are Lane County rates of Medicaid participation, but I know they are comparable to national or even potentially higher because of our high poverty rates here. So that's of concern and something that I could see becoming a real challenge for us in protecting folks in Lane County is that if they're reliant on not a private health insurance company, but on a Medicaid program, and that program starts making changes to who is covered and what services are covered, to me, that's actually where one of the greatest vulnerabilities is for us in Lane County.
And again, on that side, there are federal changes coming. I think that we're pretty confident about that. We don't know what the number's going to be and what all won't be covered at the federal level. Medicaid is a program where the federal government matches state dollars for certain services. Does not necessarily prevent the state from using their own general fund or other funding sources to cover things that you cannot cover with federal Medicaid. We see that today with, for example, abortion services, which are covered under Medicaid, but you cannot use federal dollars for that. We also see it with the Healthier Oregon population, folks whose documentation status does not allow access to federal Medicaid match dollars. So it is possible that the state could identify additional revenue. The state also has all the flexibility to decide how they would reduce costs. Would they do it with provider rates? Would they do it with the people who are covered? Would they do it with the services that are covered, or some combination of that? And we don't have any sense right now of which way the state would go in making those decisions on how to balance a budget with reduced Medicaid dollars coming into the system. So tons and tons of unknowns right now. We don't know if that will translate to fewer people having coverage. Cuts at the federal level, even populations that the federal government says you can't use federal dollars for. That doesn't necessarily translate. So anyway, there's a number of steps that we have to go through. We're tracking it as carefully as we can. Again, trying to get folks to not get too worried too quickly, waiting to see what really is going to happen, and then working to manage the health of populations who may be impacted.
All right, any other further comments? Great, well, thank you for caring so much about the county as you do, for all the citizens that you keep fighting for their health. And I'm just going to ask one last little question about the graphs, just kind of in my head. Would you give Lane County better than a C+ on the average scale? It kind of seems like we're kind of right in the middle, average to maybe a little bit better. What would you think?
Depends on who you're comparing us to, Chair Laval. I would say, what would you say? I'd say we're a C+. I think that's fair.
Pretty good guess.
Okay, all right, good deal. So we have some room for improvement, so there we go. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Would like to adjourn the joint meeting of the Board of Health and the Board of County Commissioners, and would like to resume the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. On to our item 8, our county administration item. Mr. Mukherjee has some announcements and an election update, I believe. Sir.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and I'm going to invite our Human Resource Director, Alana Holmes, up here to join me for the first one. There was some public comment this morning, and I know some commissioners have had questions about the process that we have run for the appointment of sheriff. You'll have an interview tomorrow, and so I want to invite the Human Resource Director to share with you a little bit about the specific process that we've gone through this time. I'll make just a general comment that we've had a very, I think as the board understands, a very tight timeline to work with. The former sheriff resigned and retired rather suddenly. We had about a 2-week notice on that. As an example, the county council and I have contracts with the board, and they require a minimum of 60-day notice before the termination. And the reason for that is so that the board has the time, right, to sort of do a transition in that process. You see at the city of Eugene, the city manager has announced a retirement and has given, 8 months, I think, for the city council. Much, very adequate time for them to prepare that. So we had about 2 weeks to work with between the announcement and when the former sheriff left. And so our staff has worked really hard to go through that process to publicly notice, put the application out. We did receive more than one application, but the HR director can talk about, we only have one qualified application. Interviews set tomorrow. We did put out to the commissioners, to all 5 commissioners, a request for any questions. So we've followed a standard or typical process that we've followed the last 2 times this has happened. This will be the third appointment of a sheriff that the board has done since I've been here in the last 11 years. We followed a similar process this time as we have in prior times. So commissioners have submitted questions. Those commissioners that responded submitted questions. We've incorporated those into the questions that you'll ask tomorrow. That process tomorrow, unlike the interview process for the county council or the county administrator, which while the appointment takes place in public, the interviews actually do not in that case. The sheriff will take place. The interviews will take place in public. So it's very different, obviously, because the sheriff is an elected official. You're making an appointment for the duration of the term until the next election, which will happen less than a year from now. And so because there's that additional public process, it just looks slightly different than other processes will. So I think I'll stop there. Just want to provide that overall context for the rapid time frame that we've had to work with, and then the process that we followed, and if you can fill in maybe some of the blanks.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Lovell, Commissioners. As our administrator just stated, we've worked rather quickly to stand up a process for a sheriff's appointment. And I'll just go back to what we've done to date. So once it was determined that you all wanted us to move forward in supporting you in appointing somebody, we went through and created a job posting. We put that online through NeoGov, which is our system. Everything there is posted on governmentjobs.com. As well as our talent acquisitions team shared that out to Career Builder, Talent Network, and LinkedIn. So multiple avenues to get, the announcement out there. That position was posted from May 16th to May 27th. And then what happens from there is my talent acquisition team in HR will look at those applications to determine if they met the minimum qualifications. And just a high level, because not everybody would necessarily know this, what the qualifications are very specific. They're very narrow because per the Lane County Charter, let's see, the qualifications are they shall be a legal voter of the state, be a resident of the county, and shall have resided in the county 2 years immediately preceding the beginning of the term of office. And shall meet any other qualifications required by the state for such position. And so all of those things were listed out. They also have to be at least 21 years of age, have a certain number of years of experience, all of those things. So it's unusual for our other positions to have a residency requirement of 2 years. And I'm sure we could all talk about the reasons why that's there, and it can be limiting as far as the pool of applicants. So with that, however, at the close, we received 3 applications for this appointment. And as the talent acquisition team screened based on those minimum requirements, 2 of them did not meet those mins. So they were pulled out, and we were left with 1 candidate who met the minimums and had the years to move forward, which is who you will be meeting with and interviewing tomorrow afternoon. And so at this time, as the county administrator mentioned, we also sent you all the interview questions that were used from 2019 as a starting point, asked for your feedback so that we could round those out, bringing them up to date for today. And we've done that and provided those back to you for tomorrow. And
We are scheduled for the interview of the candidate. There's a work session scheduled at 1 p.m. tomorrow, which will be in Harris Hall. It will also be a hybrid process for people that would like to watch virtually if they're not able to be here in attendance. And after that interview, the board has the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on what they would like to do from there. And we're ready if you should need a board order to move forward, that's there, and we will take direction from you after you have deliberations. So I'm just doing a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Commissioner Buck, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick question. On the other two applicants, did they not meet the residency requirements?
Let me see. I was asking my team about that. One of them I know did not meet they're from another state. And I'm sorry I can't speak to the second one, but let me look and see.
I think I can.
Okay, thank you.
I think one didn't meet residency, the other didn't meet law enforcement background.
They didn't have enough years of experience.
Enough years of
For
experience.
that. I think they had some, but not the 4 years.
Is a minimum 4-year requirement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. You know, subject to scrutiny on my behalf, I think about how do elected officials get appointed when a replacement, and who is responsible for the appointment. And this board in my tenure has been responsible for a number of different appointments. We appointed a senator for one after Chris Edwards resigned. And we went through a public process for that, and we had a limited number of applicants. We narrowed it down to a very limited number of interviews before we appointed the senator. We also appointed an assessor. Mike Coles was initially appointed. I think that might have been before you were here even, Steve. But and we had a limited number of applicants because there was a requirement for a number of requirements that were in place there. We also replaced Faye Stewart when he was a county commissioner, and we had. And I was the board chair at the time, and we interviewed everybody. And I think there were, 60 applicants for that. Because a county commissioner, unlike the sheriff, there are no qualifications other than a minimum residency qualification. But then I think about other appointments. There was something said this morning that there's always an appointment, and then the election comes and nobody ever runs to replace the appointment. Case in point with the county commissioner, somebody did run to replace our appointment, and somebody won. Over the appointed official. But what about judges? You know, I think about that a lot. What is the open process for appointing a judge midterm, which does happen, and we've seen it happen here in Lane County. The governor appoints the judge. I don't see an open process there, and I don't recall ever seeing, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, ever seeing an open seat for judge on a ballot. The judge has always been appointed midterm, and it's never appointed by a public process. It's always appointed by a single individual. So I think, you know, different positions have very different requirements. And with the sheriff's position, of course, the requirements are they're codified, and we had 3 applicants. And I don't know how much more we could do to reach out for the sheriff. This will be my 4th sheriff's appointment, actually. There was one before you got here, Steve, which was Tom Turner was appointed. So you know, the process has always been narrowed down for the sheriff because of the requirements. So I think we're going through a very as open a process as is entirely possible. And I'm looking forward to the discussion tomorrow. But you know, the point I wanted to make is we've seen judges come in, and there is an election. There will be an election to decide. One case who was a county commissioner, other cases who are judges who rarely have an opponent. And never is there an open seat. It's always been a previous appointment. And then for the senator, you know, there was an election that followed the senatorial appointment by the Board of Commissioners. That really is where things even out, is in the subsequent election. We've seen it go both ways. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, so, Mr. Bovet, you mentioned 4 years of law enforcement is one of the minimum. Alana, is the other one 2 years residency?
So the 2-year residency is from the county charter. the 4 years law enforcement experience is from the statute. So there is a combination of both charter and statutory minimum requirements. The other statutory requirements are at least 21 years of age, being a citizen, being an elector, but the 2-year residency is actually out of the charter.
But, I mean, even, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's not undoable. I mean, that's not a very tight applicant pool. I mean, there's a lot of people in Lane County that would meet that requirement. And then I was looking back, we got the retirement notification on May 1st. So, I mean, it's been a 6-week process almost at this point. So I just wanted to point those two things out, that 2 years residency, 4 years of law enforcement. There are lots of people that, and is that current law enforcement or just 4 years in your background total?
Chair, Vice Chair, it does not specify. What the ORS says is the person has at least 4 years' experience as a full-time law enforcement officer or at least 2 years' experience as a full-time law enforcement officer with at least 2 years post-high school education, you know, because we try to flex when we can on qualifications. And when I say we, I mean, obviously this isn't Lane County, this is the ORS in this situation. It also requires, let's see, the 2 years of post-high school education means 4 semesters or 6 quarters of classroom education in a formal course of study. It doesn't say what areas. Also, I thought I saw something, the person, I think this is pretty obvious, has not been convicted of a felony or any other crime that would prevent them from being certified as a police officer under the ORSs. So again, limited as far as people from out of state, people outside of the county, but a pretty low threshold for meeting the minimum qualifications. And I also got information to fully answer your question, Commissioner Buck. Indeed, both of the other applicants were from outside of Lane County, one from Montana and one from a neighboring county near us. So they would not have met the requirements.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Buck, go ahead. Oh, you said, are you said?
No, I was just saying thank you. We're great.
I appreciate that, because I think in all practicality, we generally get very few applicants because of their requirements. And I think the experience requirement makes all the sense in the world. Of course, it's a tough job, and you need to have that experience in order to do the job well. The one where I think it's not necessarily unreasonable to change is the residency requirements. You know, we don't really allow for the opportunity for a deputy director in a neighboring county to be able to apply. And they may or may not be the one that we actually like and approve and appoint. But because we don't allow the opportunity from a neighboring county in the state of Oregon, then that is really going to narrow the pool of applicants to generally those people that are in our current employment at the county. So that just inevitably shows that it's going to be more challenging to get more applicants in the queue. So although we have our current process, and I'm happy with our current process that we're going through now, I can understand the public coming to us, especially at, you know, public comment time, or writing in and saying, well, you know, this kind of seems like an inside job because there's not that many people applying, and it kind of goes pretty quick. And so there's a point there where, yes, currently the way the standards are narrows it down to people in a very specific segment of the industry that live in Lane County that likely work for our current sheriff's office. But there's nothing preventing us from expanding that even the most narrowly to deputies or other sheriffs in neighboring counties that may be interested in moving to Lane County and working for Lane County. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I am very curious in it, if that residency requirement is common amongst other counties in the state of Oregon.
Yeah, I'm going to weigh in just for a second if I can. Alana, thank you for doing such a great job with this in such short terms, and your staff is impeccable, and they got behind this and just hit the ball out of the park, especially during budget season. Just out of curiosity, how long have you been in HR? How many years?
30 plus.
30 some, yeah, that's what I figured you'd say. You'd probably say a little bit of flutter, but just to bring a point home, in your experience, vast decades of experience, a position that's of high profile like this, is it advantageous to leave the position open for a great length of time, say more than a month, or is it one of those positions where people jump on it fairly quickly as a norm?
These midterms, I think typically I've seen them move more quickly. And I really appreciate the perspectives that we heard this morning that Commissioner Buck has shared about community and their feedback. And also another balance is you have a department of over 300 people that are also looking to have feel settled with some knowledge of who's leading them for this next period of time. And so it's not surprising to me that when we see midterm changes in election cycles, my experience has been that I typically do see people moving, not leaving things up for a month, moving more quickly than that. And I would want to add a little bit more comments back to Commissioner Buck, but I understand Commissioner Farr is in the queue, so I'm happy to hold.
Okay, great. Commissioner Farr, please.
Just a couple of things. I first became a human resource director in 1986, so sorry, I probably got you beat there, but I've not been continuously such. You know, regarding the professional requirement, 4 years law enforcement, that does open it up to just about any Eugene police officer, Oak Ridge police officer, Cresswell, well, Cresswell's the sheriff's department, but Florence police officers. So there's a lot of people in Lane County, living in Lane County, who do have the requirement for the professional 4 years experience. And I'll go back to Jan Clemens. Now, I may be the only one in this room who can picture Jan Clemens' face. Jan Clemens was a Eugene police officer who ran for sheriff and became sheriff, defeated Sheriff McManus, and this was prior to Russ Berger. So, you know, we have other law enforcement agencies. There was a lot of opportunity for, I would guess, if not hundreds, certainly dozens and dozens of Lane County residents who do meet the requirement. Now, that being said, if we wanted to reappoint a charter review committee, which I would be in favor of, we could take a look at that requirement for the sheriff, because as Council Bovet said, it's in the Lane County Charter. So I'll put this seat out. Let's look at a charter review committee. This is one issue. There are a number of other issues that that charter review committee could take a look at. So that's a different conversation to this one. But that being said, lots and lots of people in Lane County, lots and lots of people can meet that requirement as far as the professional background is concerned.
Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you. I know we're getting short on time. I won't belabor or get too far into what I think of the process overall. We're constrained by ORS, by our own charter. I really appreciate Commissioner Farr bringing that up. I was going to as well, that we should maybe look at that. There's no urgency around it at this point, because that 2-year residency requirement to Lane County also limits who can stand for election. It's not just relevant to an appointment process. And really, the election is the ultimate appointment process, and it's the voters that get to make the appointment. We are here to appoint for the interim until that election. And so it matters because incumbency is a huge advantage, but it's not the ultimate appointment. And I would also say that, you know, statute also secures an acting sheriff for us, unlike a judgeship where the bench can't really operate short a judge without backing up the court. So it's not exactly analogous situation, but I do appreciate that perspective as well. So we didn't have to move this forward. We would have an acting sheriff who, for all intents and purposes, when it came time to election, would be an incumbent because he would be the acting sheriff. He just wouldn't have gone through an appointment process and a public interview. That said, for me, my concern throughout this has been our own lack of communication to the public about how we were moving through the process, and that we published an agenda with no materials or even like a cover memo, kind of outlining what you're now doing for us, which is really happening because we're being reactive to community instead of anticipating, which we should have been able to do. That it would have been useful for community to understand the constraints, to see the posting, to basically just do a better job communicating. When we get as much consistent public comment on an issue, that tells us we need to communicate back out proactively. And so for me, this is also another manifestation of the problem with us not having an opportunity to respond on the immediate heels of public comment. That when we first started getting requests from community about questions and what's this process and who will this position be open to, we could have addressed a lot of that and put a lot of community members at ease if we had had the ability structured into our agenda to give some response to public comment when people are actually here in the hall. People are not tuning in to watch this. I appreciate that we're doing it. It's important. I will make a point of time-stamping this piece of our meeting and sending it out to folks that have been in touch with me. But we all know that if we get 10 emails, there's 100 other people who didn't email us about that. Not a statistically, not a data point, but to make the point. And so I would really like the chair and vice chair and the administrator and the agenda setting team to really take another look at how we structure our agendas. We have in the past, sometimes the administrator has given response on behalf when there's a significant amount of public comment about something relating to a county process or operations. We had someone asking about the navigation center this morning. We know we're going to be discussing that in an upcoming work session. To be able to respond back to people is a part of good government and good governance. And I really miss us having a structured, regular opportunity to do that. I think we're adding to a lot of people's anxiety and creating a mystery that doesn't need to exist and that I don't think any of us wants to foster. People are at an all-time low in their trust of government and their ease with what process is happening around them. And particularly with such a high-profile position as this, we had an opportunity that we didn't meet to do a better job communicating with folks about what the process looks like and where we are in it. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, hold on, please.
So, Chair, Commissioners, I'll first start back to Commissioner Buck's comments. I do think Commissioner Barr pretty much covered what I was going to say there. One, it's the requirements are under the charter, so any change there would need to go through a charter review, and I know that's a bigger process that is y'all's to discuss. And then the second piece, that the language on the MQs, while it says law enforcement, it isn't limited just to folks who have experience in a sheriff's department in a county. Indeed, you know, from the U of O to the different cities that have law enforcement, they aren't limited from applying as well, just so that people understand that. And then second, to Commissioner Trieger's points, yes, as you and I discussed, there's an opportunity here to think about in the future, like lessons learned, what can we do? While this has been the standard, that never needs to be when we know and learn more where we can go next. And so I do think for my team, we will tag that to be a conversation. Should this come up in another interim process in the future, to engage and pointedly ask you all instead of waiting for any direction on something that's moving so quickly, and what we can do to help support that in a different way, because the information is the information, but I can appreciate when people don't know where to look or understand it, it's questionable for them. So thank you for those comments.
All right, great. Thank you for the explanation. That was super helpful. I appreciate that very much, Ms. Holmes. Mr. Mokryski, do you want to do a quick elections update, or do you want to bump that with our executive session looming?
It's your call. Yeah.
If you go ahead and do it quickly, we'll bump on. Go ahead.
Busy election, ballot curing, reconciliation, adjudicating ballots is happening. The results will be certified by 5 p.m. on June 16th. Turnout for the May 20th, 2025 election was just over 22%. Today, Tuesday, June 10th is the last day to resolve signature challenges. Elections office will be open until 5 p.m. to assist voters who would like to cure their ballots. Just over 400 ballots remain uncured. We have cured 255 ballots so far. Election staff is monitoring margins in several contests in case automatic recounts are required. The districts and candidates for those contests will be notified after certification if recounts are triggered. Any recounts that are required will be completed by June 26th. And looking forward, the measure filing deadline for the special August election is June 26th. The measure filing deadline for the November election is September 4th. And the May 2026 primary candidate filing begins September 11th, 2025. That's your elections update. And I'll hold on my other updates for a future meeting.
Very well, thank you, sir. Before we recess, I'm going to read us into executive session, and we'll meet in executive session sharply at as close to 11:30 as we can. The Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. The session is to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session, and verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision can be made in executive session. After this executive session, we'll continue our regular meeting at 1:30 in the afternoon, and we are recessed.